Andrew, how are you? Welcome to episode 5 of Revenue Talent Talks. For anyone
Thank you,
listening, I'm
Corey.
the host, Chris Gannon, founder of Captivate Talent. And today I have Andrew Davies, CMO of Paddle. How are you, Andrew?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on, Chris.
And for anyone who's watching live, Andrew does not have a fake background. That's actually his backyard, and it looks like rolling. Where are you talking to us from, Andrew?
I am in deepest, darkest Devon in the southwest of England, just outside a little quaint town called Ottery St Mary. So yeah, I'm in England.
It looks beautiful. Andrew, you are actually our first international guest, and I'll ask you to give maybe a little introduction of yourself, and then we'll jump right into everything.
Yeah, sure thing. So my background is it certainly kind of makes more sense looking backwards than it did along the way. But went to university with a scholarship from Deloitte. So I was working with them pre-university in their consulting team, technology, media, and telecoms consulting team. Went to uni with one goal, which was to graduate with my own job, so I didn't have to go back to them, and managed to do that. Started a couple of businesses that all failed horrifically at university, and ended up with a business that turned into a SaaS business that I grew with my co-founder Ed over the course of 10 years, and we finally sold in 2019. So I was the CMO and co-founder there, and then we joined an Insight Venture Partners roll-up that we sold into, which ended up buying Optimizely. We rebranded the whole thing Optimizely, so I was running kind of global corporate marketing there, and alongside a whole bunch of advisory work on the side with SaaS businesses. And then more recently, formally on the 1st of Jan, I joined Paddle as CMO. So that's the potted history.
Yeah, so it's funny. See, Steve Jobs, I think, was the one who said it. When you look back, the dots make sense. You connect the dots, but going through the journey, like, did you ever envision yourself like, I'm going to be the CMO of a unicorn FinTech company after I do all this entrepreneur stuff?
Nope, not at all. I think I recognized from those early kind of entrepreneurial experiences that I loved that process of 0 to 1, loved creating something out of nothing, and found kind of larger scaled, more stable businesses a little bit less interesting. And so, yeah, I'll always be in startups. This is where I love, the stage I love. And it just happens to be right now, I'm in a bit more of a grown up startup than I have been previously.
Yeah, so I'm curious. One of the things I want to talk to you about is the skills that you had to take with you, and maybe the skills that you didn't have when you transitioned from being your own boss and an entrepreneur. And many times, those people are almost considered unemployable after they do that. Like, how can you hire somebody who's worked for themselves and ran their own business afterward? So how did kind of your skill set and mindset have to shift, going from running your own business into more of a corporate role, if we're calling Paddle the most corporate role that you've probably held in a long time?
Yeah, and so the business we sold into through the kind of roll-ups ended up being a 1,300 person business. So that was probably a bit more corporate than where I am now. But and I'd had that formative experience before starting my own business of being at Deloitte Consulting, which is obviously much larger, a huge business. And so I'd had a bit of that background, but for me, I guess having myself gone through that journey and seen a lot of founder friends go through the acquisition journey, I think it's really you've got to be really careful through that process, and you've got to remember that there are massive changes that happen post acquisition or post joining a larger business, and part of it's about kind of the notion of control. What can you control and what can you not control? And reminding yourself, there's those three concentric circles. There's the stuff that I really can control. There's the stuff that I can influence, and the stuff that I just can't control at all. And that's true whether you're a business owner or whether you're running a small department of a large business. But reassessing for yourself what those things are in the new environment that you can control and can't control is really important. And then I guess the second thing is just recognizing in a larger business, if we talk about marketing, the marketing of your marketing becomes as important as the marketing work itself. And some people hate that, but it's just a necessary part of a growing business that, people who want to just do the work, they often don't scale into those larger environments, because talking to others and collaborating with others and preaching your gospel internally to others is as important as the work you're doing, because getting that resonance and echo and halo from everybody else is really important in a larger company.
So what was it about paddle that attracted you and made you as an entrepreneur know like this could be a place where I could be not only safe, but my skills and my passions and my energy can be like celebrated almost.
Yeah, so I mean, I had a great run at what became Optimizely. I really enjoyed the time there post acquisition. I was there for a couple of years, and actually a couple of months before, deciding to join Paddle, I'd made the decision that I was either going to stay with Optimizely to IPO or found my own business again. I definitely was not going to take on another marketing leadership role. And after categorically making that decision based on good principles, I actually got introduced to the Paddle team. I knew a few of the Paddle team. And was asked to peek behind the hood and look at their demand gen infrastructure and give a couple of views on it. And I found, and so I changed my mind because I really realised that kind of running to IPO at Optimizely, I just felt that I'd have more fun and more impact running to IPO at Paddle instead. And there were really three things that did that for me. Number one was, the people and the culture at Paddle. We can talk about that in a bit more depth. Number two, it was the massive ambition of the business. And then number three, it was the unit economics of the business that made me confident that we could go and achieve those ambitions. It's one thing to have big ambitions, but if you don't have the financial fundamentals to go and raise capital or generate profits to achieve them, then you've always got a challenge. And so those three combined made it a no-brainer for me.
So talk about, if you can, people and culture, because at that point you were almost interviewing them. And I think that's so important for people that are looking to pivot their career or even just take the next step in their job search or interviewing. What was it about people and culture and how did you kind of suss that out?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess everyone has their own way of doing this. I had a very unique and fortunate kind of interviewing process in that I got to know the whole team, the leadership team, got to be investors as part of that process of peeking under the hood. And so had kind of worked a bit alongside and bumped up against most of the team before I needed to make a decision, which was lovely. And so I'd had a chance to spend proper time. I think there were a few things that really attracted me and continue to attract me about places to work. And I, as a leader, am someone who, I think I've got a goal to always be the dumbest person in the room. And there's loads of smart people here. I want to be someone who is always being empowering and delegating and not being a ceiling on the people that are around me. And I want to have that and earn that freedom from those that are, on the board and on the leadership team here too. And I found that. I report into Jimmy Fitzgerald, who's a really seasoned, software exec, who's our president and COO, and I really saw in him someone I could really learn from too. And so there was a whole bunch of things there. I think probably the thing that really stuck out to me, we had a phrase at Optimizely from the CEO there, Alex Asperger, who used to always say, stay hungry, stay humble. And one of the things I recognized at Paddle was a real hunger to get better and a real hunger to push forwards. And that hunger and ambition was also paired with the humility to say, actually, we want new opinions. And so, when you come into an organization and you've got lots of new ideas, it's very easy for people to be guarded and defensive about it not being invented there. And it's something they've tried before. And I recognized in the team here, not just the leadership team, but throughout the ranks, that people were willing to kind of give stuff a go, even if they tried it before, or listen to a new person coming in. So those are important.
You're not the only entrepreneur that's been hired at Paddle, right? There's a couple others that I've seen
Yep.
that I know actually that have had their own businesses, had their own venture. I mean, that had to be part of the attraction for you, right?
Yeah, 100%. There are several of us. And in addition to that, we serve SaaS founders. And so one thing that really did attract me to this is I've been in MarTech for my former jobs, my former startup, and that was the ecosystem I was in. And so being out of MarTech was interesting to me to try something new. I see business as an engine for learning. And the second thing, and seeing the target persona being people like me, that was really interesting because in my previous business, we were targeting marketing operations professionals from massive global enterprises. That's not my persona. And so, knowing that my market audience was going to be people who'd been in my shoes was also interesting.
So let me ask you something about it. So you started at Paddle in January, right? Of this year. And there was something happening behind the scenes, I think, when you started, right? There was a big kind of acquisition being talked about. I mean, I'm so curious coming into a new company. you're the CMO, and all of a sudden you hear you're talking about acquiring another company. Like, how does your role and how does the marketing department change their mindset and shift their strategy around, all right, this acquisition might be coming. What are we doing now, and how are our emotions different than maybe we're just marketing out to our customers? Because you did some pretty unique things there, I think.
Yeah, like it was super interesting the timing I joined, and the acquisition wasn't on the cards when I first chatted to Paddle, but the aspiration for inorganic growth was. And then the Profitwell acquisition started to become real, and absolutely, kind of through my tenure here, we managed to execute on that, raise the capital, and do the purchase. And as I mentioned, I've been sell side once of my own company, and then buy side I think 4 or 5 times as part of that roll up journey. And so it was something that I'd seen before, and as part of that, I really had a desire to not necessarily do this better, but do this different. Often in your first couple of acquisitions, the stakes are super high. Everybody's de-risking everything they possibly can, and we made a decision quite early on to kind of swing for the fences with this, not just in the size of the acquisition and the way we did it, but the kind of build-in public nature that we went about it. And so, probably what you're alluding to is we recorded a documentary of the entire acquisition process. And so, I think one of the benefits of having seen a few of these processes was the willingness to kind of stand and say, come on, let's do something above and beyond just getting it done. Let's try and capture it for the benefit of the market as well. And so that was a fun process, and it was great to be working with people who are up for that as an experiment as well. So yeah, we've had some fun through that journey.
And that documentary was published about a month or 2 ago. We signed tomorrow, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's it. And no, you go for it, Chris.
If there's a founder, entrepreneur, anybody in the SaaS world, if you want to see what it's like to go through an acquisition, I cannot recommend watching We Sign Tomorrow. I'm sure we'll put it in the show notes. But Andrew, honestly, I messaged Trip over here in the US and I said, where's episode 2? Like, when's the it was pretty, it was like, it felt like something that should have been on like Hulu or Netflix. Like it was pretty exciting what you guys put together there.
Yeah, I'm glad you think so. Pit Piper, the director, is a friend of mine. He's an award-winning documentary filmmaker. He did a great job of coming alongside us, helping find the story. Yes, we're thinking about the next steps, about what the next episode could look like, the 6 months on or a year on. We've also cut 4 or 5 kind of extended cuts about product vision and around culture and people and around the marketing process, and so we're releasing those slowly as we go. But yeah, it was a fun process. And then as you also asked in that question, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's going on in marketing as you go through M&A, in terms of the comms plan and the process of actually releasing this market news and making the most of it. But also, the thinking about bringing marketing functions together that operate differently and they've got different goals and different structures and cultures, and that process has been interesting as well.
Yeah, well, actually, talking about that, bringing teams together. I mean, how do you assess or how do you meld these cultures together? As the CMO, I'm assuming both teams kind of started, eventually are rolling up to you in some way, shape, or form. You have redundancies, you have people that maybe are doing similar things. Like what do you do in the first 30 days of an acquisition?
I think in the first 30 days, you stop and you listen and you talk a lot, and you make sure you get to hear everybody and get to hear their concerns. You also recognize that there's going to be problems and you're not going to do it well. And there's going to be lots of things you forget about or don't get time for, or people who don't get heard enough as much as they wanted to through that process. Part of what I've been saying to the marketing function for 3 or 4 months now is this 6 months is going to be chaos. Prepare yourself. Don't expect really good processes, really good comms. Don't expect clarity. It's going to be chaos. And the 3 asks I've had of the marketing team are that they are going to be vocal. Please be vocal about your views and concerns. Number 2, flexible. Please be flexible and patient as we work through this. And number 3, be positive. Add positivity into everything we're doing. And if you can do those 3 things, and the marketing team really have, then we can walk through this journey of chaos together. And I think setting the right expectation is really important, because it is when you suddenly join forces and you've got, as you say, duplicate roles, or someone does it this way, we do it that way, or we call it this, they call it that. you can get into a really attritional circumstance where someone's trying to win against someone else, or you're trying to use your process over theirs. Whereas and also in the early days, there's lots of kind of I'm ex Profit Well, I'm ex Paddle. Those are good kind of shorthands. The former Paddle process, the Profit Well process. But very quickly, you've got to actually walk out of the room, come back in, and decide together what our combined future is going to look like. And so that act of getting on the same team is really critical.
Yeah, and I'm curious about from a leadership perspective. I mean, you have team members that are in London. I know Paddle has some team members in New York, and Profitwell is headquartered out of Boston. How do you even think about getting all those people together on the same page, in the same vision? Like, did the company do anything? Did you do anything as a team to just get everyone aligned, or at least maybe even liking each other?
So one thing that was actually, I believe, unique about this acquisition compared to everything else, certainly compared to my experience of other acquisitions that mostly were done kind of through that COVID or lockdown period, we had a company summit planned for Paddle anyway in May. And that was going to be the time when the whole company got together post-COVID. Several years hadn't been in the same room, and we were going to bring everyone from around the world at Paddle to come together. And so knowing this acquisition was likely going to close along the same timelines, we made sure we had a place with 85 extra beds so that if we were able to get the acquisition closed, we could bring them all along with us. And so for your show notes, I'll send you the video. There's a lovely video summary, just a couple of minutes of that summit. And we got everybody from the combined company into the room together at a festival type environment, with workshops and learning, but also lots of time to make friends and connect. And I've got to be honest, Chris, like as a leadership team, combined leadership team, we had a day extra early before that. But walking into the canteen when suddenly 320 people were together who most have never met before, it was like I almost had to walk out of the room again. We all felt completely overwhelmed because of the noise and the energy in the room. And so that was, it wasn't enough. It never is. But 3 days together, just as we announced this, was a real good starting point.
It feels like you took everyone to sleepaway camp for a couple of days. And
something like that. It was a good. We need more of that, right? I'm a big fan of remote working or working from anywhere. I'm sitting in the countryside here, but you can't beat FaceTime, and so those moments are really worth investing in.
Andrew, it's on your journey to the role that you're at now, it sounds like you had a lot of success, but you've also had some failures. And part of this show, we really want to speak to the people out there that might be encountering some challenges in their career. What's some advice or something that you carried with you when you encountered one of those failures in your career? How'd you get through it? Keep going.
I have a litany of failures that we can go into, and it will take more than the hour we've got here. So we can dig into this as long as you want to, Chris. There are a couple of things I think that are really important to me. Before I say this, it is also important for people to know when it's time for them to check out, right? And it is often, especially if in a toxic environment, or if something's like, there's writing on the wall, it is time to check out. So I'm not denying that. Having said that, I believe in the good old-fashioned kind of consistency, staying at it, keeping in your swim lane, not focusing on other people, and just going long enough until you see something succeed. And certainly in the business we built, we came to use the phrase several times. We've just got to survive long enough to succeed. And that was the journey we were on. It was going from potential bankruptcy to potential failure to potential funding loss to potential everything. And surviving long enough that we were able to get a great exit and be able to return value to shareholders and give team members a great next step. And so I think often in a world that's fueled by lots of aspirational content on every social media platform and lots of chat around moving up in the world, to recognize that if you're on a train that's moving somewhere, just sticking with it and holding your nose to the grindstone and learning everything can be a really good strategy. And I'm a big fan of people who have that degree of stickability.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Well, I'm sure on that journey, then you've had to hire some people, and we've all made mistakes hiring, and we've all had some big success. I'm assuming you've had some big successes hiring too. Like, what do you really look for in a person when you hire them on your team? So if there's like a marketing leader out there, like what's worked for you? when you've brought people on your team?
Yeah, yes, have had a bunch of failures here, but have also had some people who, I now count as dear friends, as well as people who I'd work again with in a heartbeat, or have now worked again with in a heartbeat, as soon as there was a role that was available. Um, I think there's a few things. Firstly, if you think about kind of the kind of Patrick Lencioni, five dysfunctions of a team, the basis of that framework is trust. And so people who are able to give trust quite early and receive trust quite early is really important to me. I love being in a high trust environment. I think the counterpoint to that is the ability to have hard conversations with each other and the ability to welcome that and not be defensive over that. Those are two things that are really important to me. So I love people who are willing to speak into me. And one of my good friends, who is now a fantastic CMO of a venture-backed business, and he was my VP of demand gen. He started off as an SDR with me years ago, Munya. We've learned loads together over the business that we built together. And I remember a couple of seminal moments where our relationship was forged by him challenging me on and giving me hard feedback on things that I wasn't doing well, or things that I just needed to react to differently. And so I love people who are willing to have conversations and receive those conversations. But then there's another thing there where I want people who are on their own learning journey, who are acquisitive about their own knowledge, who are finding their own network, their own relationships, who are wanting to be the best at what they do rather than just receive and be in the process of learning from their point person or their line manager. So there's a couple of things, but for me, it all starts with trust.
I'm curious about this because I've heard different opinions on this. Do you value people that have that learning journey maybe outside of their profession, or their passions outside of their profession, and they focus on work, they're good workers, but they have other passions? Or do you see that as something that takes away maybe from their focus at work?
I believe that people tend to be curious about life rather than just curious about one thing. And so I like to see curiosity that goes beyond the workplace. But that's not a hard and fast rule. There's a couple of people I've worked with where that work is their life, and that's totally cool if they're displaying all of the kind of other attributes that you need. So there's no hard and fast rule for me on any of this. Certainly for myself, I know in myself that I need variety and I need quite a dynamic environment. And so I put myself in other situations. I'm learning about other things. I'm always helping out informally or formally in roles and other capacities outside, because I get stimulated by that and I learn by that and I build pattern recognition by that. So yeah, I think it's a personal thing.
I'm curious, with the farm behind you, is one of those, are you farming? Do you have animals yet? Or have you gone down that route or that rabbit hole?
Just a dog. There are a fair few rabbits here, but the dog keeps them at bay. Farming is one of the things that's beyond me. I'm not practical at all, Chris. We moved out here about a year ago, and I still haven't worked out how to turn the heating on in the house. So yeah, the curiosity about that stuff is not on my agenda right now.
Well, back into digging into finding the right people for your team and everything. Do you have a favorite interview question, or something that you make sure that you ask everyone, or find out about something, or a way to unearth one of these qualities?
I don't think I'm a great interviewer. I don't think I'm a great hiring manager. I've had a fair share of successes and failures, but the question I do often come back to is asking someone how they learn. I remember in my very first class of university at Warwick School, before we started, we had a lecture from one of the organizational behavior lecturers on learning how you learn. And learning is the greatest meta skill we have. It's the skill, the learning. It's the skill by which we learn all other skills. And so knowing how you learn, for me, is a big unlock. And a lot of people don't place enough attention on it, particularly in their early stages of their career. So that's something I really like to dig into, finding out the different methods that people choose to acquire knowledge.
I'm curious on learning, if there's a marketer out there that's aspiring to get to your level, are there any places that you recommend they learn, whether it's a webinar, podcast, book?
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty about that question, though. Different people learn in different ways, so they might learn in a completely different way to me. Some people learn by doing, and they're scrapping on the side. A good friend and old colleague of mine, he was a learner by doer, and he always had a blog or a random vlog he was running, or some scrappy SEO tactics he was building, or some affiliate marketing scheme he was building, and it was all on the side. But that's how he learned. He never read a book, never listened to a podcast. That was his learning. You have other people who want to be part of a good a peer community, a pavilion, or similar, and that's just how they do it. And so I'm pretty ambivalent as to the method. I think it's just important to recognize how you learn and then to be able to invest in that.
Awesome. I love that. Andrew, I am curious. I always want to know where somebody started in their career or before their career. What was your first job ever?
Newspaper boy. I was posting newspapers from my bike. Then I was a shelf stacker at Debenhams, which is like Saks or something, a department store. Had a whole load of itsy bitsy jobs when I was a kid. I was always diligent, out there doing something. My first proper job was this one at Deloitte Consulting, where I can remember it. I applied for their scholarship scheme and went up to London for the interview after managing to get through thousands and thousands of applicants, and there was 15 places. And it was a full interview with a psychologist and multiple business leaders and partner interview. And I was 17 or 16 and a half or 17. And it felt like everyone else had been to the posh private schools. And I was just this, kid from country bumpkin from down in the Southwest. And then, once I got into it, we were thrown straight out into the market, kind of charged out as graduates, and we just were on the team, and we had no training whatsoever. My first job, I was on Oxford Circus in London, interviewing the CFO of a software company about his fixed asset register and his depreciation schedule. And I had no idea what any of his answers meant. I was just there to ask the questions and scribble and pretend I looked intelligent. No, Deloitte are great. I had a great experience with them, and I've got lifelong friends from it. But honestly, that was a really forming moment for me, because what they did was bring us on board, tell us that we were able, and then push us out into the market, and we just had to learn. I can remember being on projects and genuinely having not a clue how to kind of take myself out of the situation, think and work my way through it, and that was a real it was a really good learning experience, that I could access that learning if I just threw myself hard enough at it.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about those companies that do throw you in, where it sometimes might be scary, but you have to realize the value of the experience and exposure that you're getting by being thrown into the deep end, really. Andrew, I have two more questions for you, because I know we're holding on to a Wi-Fi connection out there in the country that's being really good to us, and I think we're tempting fate. But if you could have an alternative career or alternative job, maybe when you were younger and you thought maybe what you were going to be when you grow up, what would it be? Anything.
Oh, that's a difficult question, Chris. So I've been getting interested in the science of coaching over the last few years. I've got a couple of friends who are good executive coaches. I've got a friend who is starting a business in that space that I'm supporting and helping and investing in. And I think I love those coffee conversations where you're asking someone to reflect and they're asking you to reflect, and you're challenging each other on how you see the world, and you're helping unlock. And I've had some really powerful conversations with coaches that have helped me on next stages of my career and my life. And so if there was something else, I think I'd probably just be really interested in just doing coffees day by day with people and being in that coach mode of helping them succeed.
I love it. One more thing that I'm just curious about you from a personal perspective. If you had your top meal, your favorite meal, your last meal even, or your favorite food, what would it be?
Oh, another difficult question. I love my food. So my wife's Romanian, and her and I'm not going to say Romanian food. I apologize, Liana. It's not good. Her whole family were over with us in London last week, and there's a few Indian restaurants, or they're kind of Irani Indian restaurants in London called Dishoom, and we took them all out to a Dishoom restaurant. It was their first experience of Asian food, and that was so much fun. So yeah, something like that would tick my box.
Very cool. All right. Well, wrapping up, I have a quick question. I know, are you guys going to be at SaaStr this year? Are you going to be at SaaStr this year? I know
I'm
Paddle's
going to be
going
at
to be there.
Statster. We're going to be there. We've got massive stands there. Both us and Profitwell had already bought stands there. So we've got 2 booths, plus a whole bunch of people going. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Amazing. Well, I will see you there. We'll be there with our team. But Andrew, thank you so much for your time today. I hope this is helpful to anyone that's been listening out there. You have had an amazing career, and I cannot wait to see what you continue to do with Paddle. And I can't wait to see part 2 of this documentary because it was really good.
I'll get back right on it, and yeah, looking forward to seeing you in San Francisco in a month.
Awesome. Andrew, thank you so much. We'll catch up again soon.
Cheers. Thanks, Chris.